Welcome back. Episode 2 of the Fit Friend, Fat Friend podcast. We are here for the second time, many more to come. And if you're tuning back in from last week's episode, we're very thankful to have you back. If you're here for the first time, go watch episode 1 and then bounce back over here. But in today's episode, we are going to talk about a lot. We're going to talk a little bit about the why we're doing this, what we want to accomplish, what's the big idea, and our individual reasons and whys for getting together in the first place. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how the average person is overweight, sick, tired, and they're just thinking that that's the baseline for their life. And most people aren't even aware that they can take control and take change and make a change. And we're going to talk about the learning cycle behind that, how to overcome that, and how to ultimately hypnotize yourself into becoming a fit person forever. So, before we get rolling into the how, let's talk about the why. We both have our reasons for getting together, and we both had a great gut feeling about it. So, we want to really just interview each other a little bit and learn about what we think is the big idea and the big picture for what we're doing. So, I'll ask you first, why are we doing this? What was your gut feeling that it might be a good idea for us to connect?
I can't believe people on the internet entrusted us to hear and to actually ask to hear our opinions on fitness because they like the way that we talk about it. That was mind blowing. I thought I was a regular person. I think as you episode 1, I addressed people as fellow internet inhabitants because I think that's one great way to clump us all. And we've all been exposed to a lot of information about fitness, nutrition, lifestyle from all sorts of other different people. And I think what you and I both pride ourselves on. And when I first came across your TikTok, which I'll ask you about what inspired you what started your TikTok, what inspired me at first was I was just angry. Like I was actually really upset. The TikTok of me that blew up, I got off of like 4 onboarding calls back to back. People signed on, started training with me. I just started to tell people at first, hey, I just need you to focus on your protein goal. And they're like, what about macros? I'm like, that's like AP Chem right now. We're starting third grade. Like, let's just begin that. And they're like, well, what about calorie deficit? I'm like, I know you've almost heard too much for your own good. But we're going to break it down to simple, chewable basics. And I think that even our candor and our demeanor and how we both relay that, one, it's what when I saw your content, I was like, yo, this is my wavelength. I like this guy. And I think that's something that was easily one, you could tell that you were becoming popular. And a lot of the way that we were both sharing fitness and nutrition tips and concepts and our own paradigms as to what worlds we exist in within fitness, that there's almost a human aspect. You're not just hearing a guy with abs, you're lazy, you're undisciplined, you're this and that. We're like, no, these are real choices that absolutely everybody can make. And some crazy things happen to you when you start to make conscious choices for yourself, you start to change what you eat. Inevitably, everyone who changes what they eat, they go through this realization of just like, wait a second, I can change how I feel and how I look with food. And you kind of
Hmm.
have that aha and you see it at scale. And then you start to see, whoa, there's actually an issue with the way that a lot of people are eating. It's difficult to talk about. It's a level of difficulty that has almost been protected in some ways because people can be offended by talking about what they eat. I've talked about on a group call before how literally I've had to stop seeing someone because they made fun of how I eat. It's things that we take personally, and when we hear someone who can share it with us in a way that's packaged with love and not judgment, it's something that you're able to actually connect with and hear. So with my TikTok, I got really mad and I was just like, if I got on TV and just said everyone should focus on hitting the protein goal, a lot of our issues would be fixed. Like a lot of them. Like we would, what about macro mesocycle? What about mesophase? Weighing this out, this out. I'm like, wait a second, protein goal. Just start with eating the foods that are just made for you. And so I think really the intention behind even what we're called to do, what we're inspired to do, what I'm called to do, what I'm inspired to do, and this is what we'll get into. I have a great question for you. I have such a because your mindset I've seen your mindset's changed a little bit since one you and I have started talking, and and also since you've seen responses on TikTok and how internet inhabitants can take things. And so really what when I saw your content, I was like another guy who's saying it like a real person. We have to connect. Like, there's so I don't remember what TikToker it was, but I remember just kind of being real. Yeah, people might think I'm mean. I'm not. Like, I'm really not actually mean. But there's one TikToker, bodybuilder, who just like what I just saw his beard and his face in his camera. Americans are just lazy. And I'm like, that's not it. It's not it. If it were that simple, they would just get outside. But that's not it's something way deeper. And I think it's the fact that we're programmed to believe subconsciously that this is normal. And that's the thing, it's not. And that really through and through, each of us is entitled to a certain level of vitality. And what I think that with great communication and with love and with proper concepts being shared and humanity being accepted for what it is, that we're going to make mistakes and make errors, this playing field can become a much more rewarding and profitable area for the individual to then achieve even their own levels of personal development. So as a gym trainer since 18, I've just wanted to get it perfect ever since, and we're just continually refining that because I didn't like when clients didn't get results. I took it personally. I was like, this is my fault. And so really what our intention is here, or my intention is here, is to share genuinely practical human sustainable. Like when I say human, that's underrated because I think people just get talked to like they're computers and we forget the human aspect. Just do these macros, but I have feelings. Just like exactly. So you're not a computer program. You're not meant to just input. That'd be nice. That's ideal, but it's not how it is, unfortunately. Your mood changes, all this stuff, and I want to get this instead. My goals change. I want to get this instead. I got a question for you though. When it comes to even since you and I have met, so we met. For those of you that don't know, we met about really 2.5 months ago, I think. I followed you and I was flattered because I think you only followed 50 people at first, like or something small, and you had 1,000 followers. And I hit it and I was like, oh, Higher Wellness followed me back. That's cool. Nice. And then we started talking. But I got a question for you. What inspired you to start actually posting? Because I think that you and I had very similar inspirations, but what inspired you to start? I'm wondering.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm not blowing smoke up your ass when I say it was actually you. You were the straw that broke the camel's back of my quarter life crisis. I I'd been incessantly obnoxiously passionate about this for 5 years at this point, and someone would be like, "Yeah, I'm like kind of into working out." I'd be like, "Oh wait, hold on, you want to talk? You want to talk about it? You want to talk about? I can talk about." It. And then I would preach. It became to the point where I would have to intentionally reserve myself and reserve my passion, and that's not a great feeling. But I started to try to find people that were more like-minded, and that helped. But I knew I have spent the last 5 years of my life building this knowledge base, and the more I get out in the world, and the more people see me and identify me as the fit person and ask me things, and I answer the questions, I realize that there's a ton of people that don't know the basics,
Hmm.
and or what are the basics to you and I. And I thought I consider myself pretty articulate. I speak for a living in a way. I was graded on speaking in college. I think I can get my points across on most topics, subjects, and matters in a pretty clear, concise way. And fitness should be no different. But I was so worried about what people thought. And that's a part of me that has
It's
effectively died
taboo.
as a result.
It's
Yeah, yeah.
taboo.
Oh, you're trying to be an influencer. I could
Mm-hmm.
see my friends making fun of me. I had this picture in my mind, and I think we do this a lot as human beings. It's kind of the definition of anxiety is you build a predetermined outcome in your head of how it will be, and then you're just absolutely backwards wrong about the way it was, or the way it actually is once it happens. I had this idea that I was going to be made fun of and ridiculed and be the person that people talk about when you get on their story and you hear a lot of you have been asking me about, and you're like, ugh, and
The
you want to vomit.
line.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I I just decided I got out of the gym one day and I saw a trainer do something really stupid and I had seen your content. Those were my two main catalysts were the Protein 101 video that went viral. I recorded in my car literally immediately after finishing a lift. But like literally the night before I found your TikTok page and I was looking at it and every thumbnail was just your face. And as I watched, I was like, oh, he's not doing anything crazy. Like he's not doing any hustly video editing, which is what I thought it took to be successful in the space. It's like he's just talking to me like I'm receiving a Snapchat from him. I can do that. That's
Mm.
exactly how I would want to do that. That makes sense to me. And I saw you had 150,000 followers. It's like, okay, well, clearly somebody's vibing with this relaying of information style. And so I just started doing it. So you were really the catalyst for this, along with the Doughboy trainer at at Commercial Gym Fitness. We can edit that out. We can edit that out. At Commercial Gym Fitness USA, who shall not be named. And here we are, 3.5 months later, 4 months later, and you and I are partnered up. I DM'd you and said, I really appreciate you following me because I was like a little bit starstruck at first. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what else to call it. Like I was like, whoa, I've been following this dude for like 3 months and he just followed me on IG. And then you said you liked my content and I felt very flattered. And then
I
I
loved it.
realized that there were just parallels.
Dude, you know what's crazy? You just reminded me. So I have a best friend. I mean, I would say he's actually more of a working acquaintance. We have parallels together, but we're not actually intimately involved in friendship, I would say, or business, or the deeper intricacies of our lives. There was this one TikTok I posted, my first TikTok that went viral. It was the protein one. He said something that was a very interesting slight at me, and I didn't realize it until. And ironic thing is, he manages influencers. Like he's got like 7 or 8 fitness coach influencers that he helps run their business for. And I just said, "Hey, man, I have a TikTok of mine that's blowing up right now." And he goes, "What did you do? Post yourself shirtless?" I went, "Actually, it was what I said." And I remember like it was like an unpeeling of like this kind of like weird. Like I took it personally. 'Cause I was like, you should be happy for me. I feel like I've talked about wanting to get my start on this. I finally had a TikTok that did well. I don't know what it is about this. I think, oh, you know what? Simple. The well is poisoned in fitness influence. I actually will share this one small thing, and one also too. Brian DaCosta, shout out to
Yeah.
this guy. He had this hard caption that inspired me to start posting. And I think this is the thing that we struggle with. If someone's out there, one, anybody who wants to share their fitness content, you deserve to. Like, let's just start with that. You absolutely and utterly deserve it. This is your journey. This is your experience. You deserve to document it. At the minimum, you're going to wish that you had when you do get fit. I wish I went back earlier, started documenting more stuff earlier. Would it have been good? Maybe not. But to me, it's what mattered because it was my journey in my life. And I wanted to share it. And content itself is the transference of energy through a screen. Good content, good energy. It's just going to be well received, ideally, at least if you know that you come from that. But shout out to Brian DaCosta. He had this caption that went so hard, it inspired me to double down. And he said, plot twist, assigned influencer at birth. And hearing that and the way that that settled into me went, what else are we supposed to do? What else are people supposed to feel inspired and called to do? And when is it? When do we give ourselves that title? And hearing it as that from the very beginning was like this, it like overtook my entire world of fear of what are they going to think of me? What are they going to this and that? And this isn't meant to be a podcast for roasting influencers and saying who's a good influencer, who's not, who can post, who isn't. But one thing that I will say, and I understand why, is people can feel authenticity, and people can feel when you really share it from your heart, when you really mean it. And what's this? You know the quote better than me. What is it? What this? It's a Zig Ziglar quote about caring.
People, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
That's the shit right there, dude. Like
That
that's the
is the
shit.
shit.
That I feel like I'm not going to name names, but I will say it makes perfect sense to me as to why even I had a block with posting, why you might have had a block with posting. I told this to you, I think, in our private conversation. I dated an influencer who got hit up by a brand. This is where I think dehumanizing things can really be consequential to people receiving things that may actually help them. Because it just, when you're talking at them, you see them as a number, as a follower, as a this or that. I was dating a girl who was an influencer. This isn't a slight on her, but it's what she had to do. A brand would hit her up of supplements she didn't even take. And she would, after we did our workout together, she would take the pre-workout, put it in a bottle, and then record just about to head to the gym, just taking it. And I'm like, this is why people don't trust us. Like, I know it, I see it. How can you even say that in clear conscience? Like, you know, you're saying it. And that's the part where I feel like for me, people see this detachment from from people that they may feel called to listen to, but they're having conflicting messages and they're not really giving value, adding value as a human. It's more transactional. Watch me push this. And it's more not, hey, here's an idea I had. This may help you. I think this could help you. I think that's where truly an influencer is meant to shine, is through their own creativity of their own unique experiences and ideas, and to be able to share that and gift that with the world. Is that not a more beautiful use of social media than I think what most people may I've unfortunately fallen to. And I feel like it takes treating the camera. I love how you said like a Snapchat. My inspiration behind videos was always talking to my friend who knows what to do, but he doesn't do it. And I was you would this guy would take protein shakes. I was his best friend, a trainer, during the workout. And I would be like, just wait. And he'd be like, no. I'd be like, and like I'm not going to speak on he didn't have great results. And I was like, I you clearly should listen to it's unspoken. Like you should take my advice. And I would get and I would like he would always just jabs, jabs, jabs. Like, oh, you think you're so fit, oh this or that, or you eat salads it was like this complete demonizing of I think the levels of fitness, which really only just blocked him. And so I started making content being like, I'm talking to him mentally and I'm sharing it with him. I'm sharing it with love, like it's my best friend. Like I really care for him. And I'm saying these things because I care for him. I got another question for you. So what we're going to lay out in this episode, which we're really excited to do, is essentially, well, so you guys are posting on TikTok and posting on YouTube. You guys have coaching businesses. You guys have a joint venture together. You guys are helping. You guys want to help, and you guys want to help at scale via social media. I think there's no greater testament to showing proof than to actually share from our experience, one, what we've done, what our sort of assessment of what I don't want to say this is grand of us. This is our assessment of the world and how we can make everyone fit. Yeah, but kind of in a respectful, loving way, and in a way that we know that we can pair it and really make it, dare I say, this sounds so it sounds not far-fetched, but it makes sense. And it really be received. And I think that's what we want to hypnotize you into is to actually receiving the information that may just change your life. That's what content did for us. So no greater gift than to actually share that back. But I got a question for you, Michael. When you started posting, what was the biggest, let's actually define this. This is I think a great way to start.
Mhm.
How would you define someone we look let's call it what it is because I think this will actually help us get clear on a lot of things. How would you define a fat person? How would you define someone that's fat? Because it wouldn't be fair for us to look at someone who's overweight, who's in their journey, and then be like, just assess them visually as that. That would be downright degrading to them. But there are people who are on this, I don't, I hate, as a male, I'm going to be black and white. And I do have empathy. Believe me, I do. But when let's say someone is objectively having a difficult time, I'm going to go male to male. If you're a female watching this, I have very different rhetoric, very different verbiage and how I would approach this. Let's just say someone isn't achieving their goal and they're advocating to stay that way. Let's just say hypothetically. How would you define quote unquote a fat person per se?
That's a really good question. There's so many ways that I could answer that. I honestly think the best way to answer that is in the psychological principle that we were talking about before we started recording, which is the cycle of competence, the learning of a new skill. There's a concept in psychology, for those of you that don't know, I believe it's called the competence cycle, and it follows as such. You are first, and this is any new skill you've learned. If you asked me to build a house right now, I'd be in the first phase because I have no clue how to do that. So when learning a new skill, you go through a cyclical pattern. It's a cycle of first unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know, and you have no idea it's out there. You then move to conscious incompetence, which is I now know that I don't know shit and I need to figure it out. And it's probably the most uncomfortable of the phases and the
Mm-hmm.
place you want to get out of the fastest once you realize you're there because you now know that you've been doing it wrong and you need to figure it
No
the
one
hell out.
likes knowing they suck. Nobody.
Nobody,
Mm-mm.
nobody. And then you move to conscious competence, where you're doing the right things, you're acquiring the skill, but it takes some deliberate, diligent effort. You got to think about it to do it right. It's, for those of you that have picked up a new sport, maybe later in life, you're picking up golf or tennis, you can play a game and you can function, but not all your shots are great. And you really have to think about bringing your hips through the shot and having the right form. You're thinking about what you're doing. And then you move into unconscious competence, which is sort of like a state of nirvana, especially in the fitness area. It's you can intuitively achieve these things and you don't really have to think about it. Pro athletes do this, professionals in any space do this, and it's where we've gotten to the point of being able to intuitively lean out, intuitively gain size and strength. It's programmed into our brains. We've hypnotized ourselves into living this way of life in a form of autopilot, but we are actively engaged and present.
Ooh.
So I would define a fat person as unconsciously incompetent of their habits, environment, surroundings, and mindsets. They have accepted that this is the way that it is, this is the way it will be, and this is my baseline. Fat people can be fat physically, but they're also very fat mentally. You've heard
Yeah.
when a company does a mass layoff, they call it trimming the fat. There's a reason for that. You don't just acquire fat around the midsection, you acquire it in the brain. And I think defining fat people, there's a lot of things I could say about the mind that I think would lead to a healthier body. And I think if you define a fat person, you start with their mindset, and it's complacent, it's tolerant, it's too accepting, and it's self-limiting. I think that you are complacent with where you're at. Most fat people, I don't, this is an 80-20 rule. There are some very successful, incredibly impressive people who happen to not prioritize physical health. But a lot of times your body is a reflection of your behaviors and the way you see the world. I believe that they are complacent with where they're at physically and they're not striving for more. They've accepted that this is where they're going to be, and this is that feeling kind of bad is just baseline, and that's just what everybody
Yeah.
feels like because they don't know that they can take control and stop being a passenger in their own life, as you said yesterday.
Hmm.
And I think they're too tolerant. They're too tolerant of bad relationships, people pushing them to do things they know maybe aren't great or right for them towards their goals. They are too tolerant of where they're at and where they feel like they know they shouldn't be, and they need to develop a state of intolerance. So that's a long-winded way to say I would define a fat person as unconsciously incompetent. They are not aware they can make a change.
If we could bring awareness to something that I think is actually groundbreaking, it is you said tolerant and you said too complacent. They're maybe too agreeable. They're almost accepting that this negative state
Bingo.
is almost like what's normal. It's normalized to them. I think what would help one, so Michael and I we have conversations that you would think we would take shrooms and be talking about. We do this sober. We would go top to bottom. We're both airy. I'm very airy. I'm up in the air. Like I love this. I love the world. All this stuff is weird. It's just awesome. Simulation experience, whatever you want to call it. But this, what you just said, I think most people aren't aware of, and I wasn't aware of until I became hyper aware, and it became like almost even a problem, because it became incessant. It's the awareness of the ongoing conversation in our head about what we deserve. And some people, I watched this TikTok this morning, and it was called "What's the Fifth Dimension?" I don't mean to go there. I really don't. We're gonna say actually super on topic, but it goes. He holds up a piece of paper and it says rock star on it, and he goes, "Without opening your mouth, I want you to say rock star." And the whole audience goes in their head, obviously quiet, but they said it in their head. And he said, "Who said that?" In their head. Who said it actually though? Who heard it? You heard it, but who said it? You said it. Whose voice was it? And then you heard it, but did you even really say it? But you heard it. You could hear it in your ears, in your mind. And that's sort of like this unspoken space of an ongoing tape recorder in our own head. And these conversations happen. This is where we start stuff. Like it's like, and I think one thing really that people may in this layer of unconscious incompetence is they haven't cleaned it up in a little bit. It's almost kind of like I've heard of this put as three circles of life. First circle is where your environment and your prior habits define you. Second circle is where you start to change people go off to college, people get their new first big job, people start meeting new people, a new layer of life, a new full circle of life. And this one is where you've maybe changed and seen how different it can be with this is what remember we were talking about earlier when people start to change what they eat, they inevitably see a lot of things that can change. And they almost get broken off from these habits, this hypnotic rhythm, this rhythm of just natural. I just do things because I have what's called auto suggestion in my brain from this quote unquote fifth space or the space where I think and talk to myself. One of the best ways I've ever heard this is humans are a walking conversation. And most people, to some degree, are actually a little bit more transparent than you think. And that's where you get really down to earth almost in some interesting way. But inside this, I'm pointing to those hearing, inside this between your two ears, there is a whole other conversation going about what's possible, what I can do, what's normal for me. And a lot of that voice just begins to get so familiar and it sounds so similar. It's so similar to our own that we even forget how much weight it does have. And this is where I think cleaning thoughts and cleaning you're or even just setting goals and having this. What we're going to go through is this couple of layers about where we were when we were unconsciously incompetent and we didn't know, because we didn't just walk out halo on our head as soon as we came out of the womb, fit, ripped, six pack. Like, this was a learning experience. Michael had to eat a lot of shit. I had to eat a lot of shit. There was a point where I didn't realize I looked like shit, objectively, for me, at least from my eyes. That's how much the human can expand as soon as, I think, when they're able to expose themselves to higher levels of possibility and also really believing it and aligning their auto-suggestion with it. Now that's where things start to get freaky. You start to talk about manifestation. You start to talk about reticular activating system, and even just beginning to get your attention on other areas and other top or different sites for yourself, even. um, for you, when you started to see that you had choice, because let's just say this, like, let's say maybe the first bridge is conscious choice. One of my favorite ways that I've heard Andrew Huberman talk about breath work is that breath work is the bridge between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. You can bring yourself to the present moment in an instant. With you going from your, let's get into your story. How did you actually get to a place where you made the choice? Let's just say you made the choice. Hypothetically, it's always there, but what happened? How did you start changing? How did you go from unconscious incompetence to then this next layer of learning, which is the conscious incompetence? What was that first stage for you like?
Very simple answer. Fat shaming changed my life. I'm
Okay.
not joking.
How?
I am not kidding.
It
I
hurts,
was
but it
fat shamed
works.
into conscious incompetence. I was literally fat shamed into it. I stand by fat shaming as a great
Same.
motivator for some people, and I don't mean that in a derogatory fashion at
Yeah.
all. I am not making this shit up. There was a time when I was younger, I was in college, and I was turning and burning pretty hard. I was drinking hard and heavy. I was partying, and that lifestyle just isn't conducive to being jacked. Let's just say that. That was when I was at my heaviest, 230, 240, maybe 235. Big, big for me, uncomfortable. But I just didn't think about it. I was just having fun. It was whatever. I had a buzz cut. I had a chin beard. It was brutal. It was a bad time in my life. And I will never
Bro.
forget, I was going up the stairs uh, in in my parents' basement, and my friend didn't know I was in the room walking out. He thought I was gone, and he just said to one of my buddies, "Dude, smoke is getting big." And instead of getting
And
upset by that, in that moment, I was halfway up the stairs and I stopped and I just went, "Fuck, he's right." I'm like, what am I doing? Like I've always been heavier, but I always had sports to kind of counterbalance it out. In middle school, I was a chubby kid, but like throughout high school, I was so active, it just didn't matter. But I kept eating like that and not moving like that, and
uh-huh.
then adding, half a handle of whiskey every 3 days on top of it. No exaggeration. It really it ballooned. I ballooned, and I looked at myself, and he was like, "You know what? He's right. I can't be mad at him for pointing out a fact. Elvis is also dead, and the sky is also blue. Why should I be insulted that he made a clear and accurate observation?" That was my move from unconscious incompetence to eating Waffle House at 3 a.m. and not giving a shit to realizing I got to get a hold of this and I got to do it fast. And that was where I started the conventional shit, eat 5 meals a day because you have to
Mm-hmm.
keep your metabolism going and all the bro stuff. That's where I started to move into that uncomfortable area of conscious incompetence, which is what we'll move
Uh,
into next in just a minute, of it, the very uncomfortable place of I'm fat. I now understand that. I understand I feel like shit and it's time to make a change. So conversely, you posted an Instagram post of you in your thicker days, and it
thick
was I
boy.
didn't expect it. I didn't expect to see it on my TL. So I'm curious, was that area 2019 Yusuf, was that your unconsciously incompetent?
It was. And so I have less I actually I see clearly 2020 why I didn't realize it. There are two moments where I saw photos of myself and I let go. It was a member appreciation day at my gym, and someone got a video of me reaching up to grab a balloon. And I had a skin tight polo on. I did not I've never seen myself from that angle before. And I went, you know when Jimmy Neutron was turned himself into a hamster? I look like that. Where he was round, soft, voluptuous. What I fell into, like everyone else, I feel like, was I just simply had other priorities. Like, I just was trying to grow in my career professionally. when my career success, my performance was what I hung my pride on and my ego on, I used it. I used anything to get me ahead as a justification as to why I've let go of myself personally or why I wasn't prioritizing myself. And it took pain and it took, I've been fat shamed. And my favorite way of hearing this is other people's words will only hurt you to the degree that you already believe it's true because they're just saying hot air. They're just making vibrations with their throat, but you're going to hear it a certain way. And like, even for you, you heard it analytically. You heard, why would I get mad at him for saying the truth? Like, and you had a moment, like a self check, a realization. For me, it was the same in that photo that I posted. I didn't even think it was bad in the moment still. But looking back on it, my friend posted that, but other general manager of a gym posted it. And I saw it current day and went, oh my God, I thought that was normal. And that's why I feel one, it's the illusion of choice. And that's why unconscious incompetence is so fucking slippery. It's slippery because it's the illusion that you have a choice, but you don't even know what you don't know. At the time, at my current mindset, my mindset was career success. But we both spoke about how we actually ate primarily for comfort. We ate driven out of taste, out of self medicating, out of self soothing. And, for me, I always use food as a reward. Oh, I did this. I had a great day. We did 4 or 5 new clients. I'm going to get this at the end of the day, or I'm going to have this, or I'm going to treat myself to this. And it was like learning to justify the thing that made me feel good. And it kind of like outweighed the bad until someone just absolutely leveled me and just went, I hired a coach. I got fed up. There are certain points. There's actually many points where I got fed up, but I'll give this one. It was when, and this is going to sound vulgar to some people, but like I had a coach from prison to my face tell me, man, you're really being a giant bitch about the fact you can't eat Twinkies right now. That's funny because I ate California commissary food for 10 years, didn't bitch once. I just ate it and did fucking push ups. I got leveled and just went, I'm really not as badass as I thought I was. Like that guy who I just met could run me over. Plain and simple, I just knew I didn't earn it yet. I didn't deserve it yet. And so I started acting in alliance with deserving it. And that's where I think getting clear on goals. One, I was someone who was a passenger in his own life. Like I was very much comfortable, but really what it introduced me to was a lens that I just ignored my blind spots. And my blind spots were my personal health and my eventually over time, it just compounded into what looked like a poor physical manifestation as life would have
Yeah.
it. Because factually, I was eating the wrong, I don't want to say the right and wrong stuff, but I was eating the wrong stuff for where I was. And that's where I think, hopefully, actually, maybe our next point into this is when you got into conscious competence, you started going to YouTube fitness, right? Who did you watch when you were in YouTube, when you were on that side? Who
Mhm.
got you? Who got you hooked?
One of the first people I still follow and listen to a lot of these people today, but that was a really good way to just call back to what you talked about, to talk about unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence. A lot of you listening to this are probably in conscious incompetence to conscious competence range. You're knowing it's time to make a change and you're actively learning and trying new things and failing forward and moving forward, and it's a good place to be. Some of you may be hearing this for the first time and thinking, "Oh, geez, I don't feel good every day and I do need to make a change," in which case you have now taken your first step out of unconscious incompetence, and congratulations. So, when I moved into conscious competence, and where hopefully this episode will help people do the same, move into conscious competence, I was watching YouTube Fitness, as you said, and I was watching a lot of what people that are familiar with YouTube Fitness may consider the OGs. I watched a
Mm,
lot of Thomas DeLauer. I actually credit like my falling in love to fitness for with like 3 or 4 people. I would say Lane Norton taught me I appreciated the science behind it.
mm-hmm.
Greg O'Gallagher, who was very different in 2017, for those of you that know Kino Body,
Very.
he's now Lamborghinis and mansions and flashy cars, and he's teaching people how to get girls. When I discovered him, he was a guy taking his walks and recording himself talking about the power of getting your steps in, eating a high protein diet, and strength training 3 times a week with focused, intense workouts. He was the first person that made it make sense to me. That I was like, all he kept saying was, "Getting fit is so simple. Getting fit is so simple. Move 10,000 steps a day, more if you want to. Push off your first meal if you have a big appetite. Wait till lunch, no big deal. Hit your protein goal. Get stronger in the gym. Do those things for 3 months. You'll be unrecognizable. And I thought, well, that's just so simple. And that's just sounds impossible to argue with. So he made me realize that this
Wow.
stuff is simple. Thomas DeLauer made me realize that I was fascinated behind the science of the science of fasting, nutrition, all the headier stuff. Lane Norton made me fall in love with the science of training and appreciating muscle hypertrophy, and how I realized that I think it's incredible that we can literally completely change the way our body looks just by stressing it the fuck out for like a long time. It's a crazy
Mm-hmm.
concept to me. I think it's incredible, and I wish more people appreciated it. So those are like the three people that really did it for me, and they sent me into conscious competence. I started putting effort into intermittent fasting, putting effort into finding protein rich foods, putting effort into learning about the physiological processes that happen when we prolonged fast and we intermittent fast, when we strength train. So I was actively learning, and I was getting it all through YouTube. And I suggest you out there listening, all of you do the same. I mean, outside of this podcast, there's
Mm-hmm.
incredible free content from the best PhDs and MDs and gurus in the space, and it costs you nothing but your time to learn. So my conscious competence looked like tons of YouTube fitness, tons of Mind Pump, the fitness podcast, which I think is the number one fitness podcast in the world at this point. But back in
Really?
2017, they were still growing. So for me, it looked like learning about the basics, which is get strong, eat your protein goal, move every single day, whether you're in the gym or not, move every single day, and try to get strong in the gym. Don't do too much, just do enough and make it a focused, controlled, measured effort. That was conscious competence for me. What did it look like for you?
Hmm. So I'll go to my most recent one, my most recent bout into conscious competence. Peter Crone has his quote: "Your ego." He taught me about ego. Your ego will gladly sabotage your entire life just to prove it is right. And that's when I
Ooh.
started to get like these chills and this like I kept getting mad at the world. I kept getting mad at my results without realizing that that's what I deserved. And it was like, or else it wouldn't have been that way. And I just was introduced to a lot of activities and mental models and mindsets that introduced
Mm,
me to a new world of possibility. He's usually a guest. If you type in Peter Crone on Spotify, you'll find all the episodes he's a guest on. I binged them. And when I binged them, there's this one line also he gave me that was, I feel like I'm stealing because it's so profound. Life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free, right? Wherever you're triggered is your therapist. For me, with the big ego, everything triggered me that didn't go my way. And so I started figuring out what can I not be with? Okay, so I'm saying I can't be with not appearing successful. Why does that matter? Because they think this about me, and that means I feel this way. It's like this whole mind fuck of like not even real things. These people that you can find, whatever your favorite influences are, go ham on them. Absolutely, and I love
yeah.
giving them credit too. I give everyone credit for both those guys. I was like, they both have helped me transform a ton.
Yeah, you said a couple things. One earlier, you said borrow thought patterns. I was listening to the Chris Williamson podcast, Modern Wisdom, and he had on David Lade. For those of you who don't know, David Lade's one of the original insane transformation YouTube influencers. He's like one of the faces first Gymshark athletes back in 2016, 2015. And he's actually pretty enlightened. He's got famous really quick, like uber famous through YouTube, and has done a lot of spiritual searching and grown up a lot spiritually and emotionally. And Chris Williamson asked him something to the effect of, you're only 25. You seem far beyond that in years mentally and emotionally with your EQ and emotional intelligence. How did you get there? And one of the things he said was borrowing thought patterns from other people. So though we've talked a lot in this conscious competence phase so far of like how we got to intentionally adopting new skills, which is what you will have to do as you move from fat to fit. Tracking your calories will be uncomfortable. Hitting your protein goal will be uncomfortable. Getting your steps in will be uncomfortable until it's not. And eventually it won't be.
Mm,
And that's where you move into unconscious competence, where you just do this shit on autopilot. But we encourage you to borrow thought patterns from other people, borrow them from your favorite influencers, think the way they think, listen to how they view the world, how they view fitness, how they view mindset, and borrow that from them. And then another thing you mentioned is your brain, basically what you said is your brain is not always your friend. What your brain,
Absolutely.
sometimes you have thoughts and it doesn't mean you have to act on them or feel anything. You just have them and they're
There's
there.
impulses.
So a lot of them are impulses, exactly right. And they're not always on your side. Our brain's job is to keep us alive and keep us comfortable. I did a 48-degree cold plunge before I hopped onto this podcast to record. And to this day, I've done 200 plus of them. And to this day, right when I'm standing beside it, trying to talk myself out of it. But I've gotten to sort of close to unconscious competence with cold, where I'm aware of that thought and I say, that is my brain thinking it's fighting for me on a primal level because it sees it as a threat. But I can fight against that. I don't have to listen to that. I can be aware of it and then I can silence it. And that parts like that I believe is where we move to the last thing we want to talk about, which is unconscious competence and how to get there. So by now, hopefully you realize fitness can be put into this psychological concept of unconscious incompetence to incompetence to conscious competence to unconscious competence. This is what it's all about because it is a skill to get fit and you have to learn it until you don't. Of course, you'll learn things in different ways, but the basics, once you have them down, they're autopilot. We intuitively hit protein, we intuitively train, we intuitively get good sleep, but you have to lean into the discomfort and earn the unconscious competence where it's like tying your shoes or brushing your teeth. It's something you
Hmm.
do that you don't have to think about. So, borrowing thought patterns, understanding that our brain is not always right and it's not always looking out for us, and you can let thoughts pass and go against them. Those are all very important to moving to the last phase of the learning cycle, which is unconscious competence.
Can I
So,
mention one
lean
thing
into your
really
favorite.
quickly?
Yeah, of course.
On conscious competence. And so for some people, they go, why are the thoughts I have the thoughts I have sometimes too? You've ever heard, this is a great Zig Ziglar quote, you are who you are and you are where you are because of what's gone into your mind and what's actually, I added this part, what's gone into your mouth. So you are who you are and you are where you are because of what's gone in your mind and your mouth. This next part with thoughts and impulses, how can I get in control over that? How can I use, and this is where you should get to a point where one, I have legal pads that are filled, like I have at least probably 15 with ideas and just what I'm thinking. I say journaling and meditating are two of the greatest ways of processing the impulses you have that appear as thoughts. And just getting to, people have mentioned observers' perspective. People mention what, like, how do you I don't want to say disassociate. That's not really appropriate. But how do you at least appreciate and respect the thoughts that you do have, but it doesn't necessarily always mean that you need to listen to them. That's why I say meditation and journaling is a very helpful exercise and practice of, I don't want to make it sound like combative, but wrestling with your own thoughts, especially at first. There were points in my life where I had to wake up, and the first 2 seconds was when I was the happiest because I forgot why I needed to be pissed, and it's like, if I didn't have money, or if rent was due, or I was struggling for, or car payment was due, or I didn't know if my job was secure, or whatever it was, when that worry came back, it didn't necessarily mean it was real or that that was the lens I needed to have on it. It was just one way of looking at it. And dare I say, it was kind of like the prehistoric way of looking at it. It was like the animalistic side of it, the worry. Worry and intelligent worry are both very different. Like conscious worry,
Mhm.
where you could be thinking about, oh, that could possibly be a downside, but this is how I'd mitigate that, or this is how I'd approach it still. But when you view these thoughts and they pop up, and maybe it's the inner critic, maybe it's the I don't deserve, maybe we talk a lot about, one, you have to do the things to know that you deserve it. So this takes time. This takes writing. This takes going through the very actions that are then going to help you identify as the type of person that does those things. With these thoughts, especially, imposter syndrome is going to be normal. The inner critic and wanting to, I don't want to say, to recognize that it's difficult is going to be normal. This is where training yourself and your thoughts is possible. We talked about this before. If you can drive a car, you can think positive and you can be fit. Both are skills. All just like when we started driving, I know I'm not the only person. When I got behind the wheel of a car for the first time, was like, what the fuck is this? This is a
Yes.
spaceship. Why isn't the steering wheel in the middle? Why is it on the left side? That makes how am I going to drive with it? And it just, you're like, this is dumb, this is this and that. And then you do it, and within like a month or two, you're fucking Snapchatting people, eating a sandwich, doing
Not a
saying
good
hello.
idea, by the way. We don't condone those things.
And it's like it shows to the progression. Now we've moved the task to subconscious, but at first it was daunting, and we're like, is this even for us? Is driving even safe? Do I even want to go on a highway? That's really fast. What if I die? And like you just get exposed to this new arena of thoughts, but it doesn't mean it's for the perspective that you need to have the entire time. You can train it with practice through journaling, meditation, and listening to cool people who know what they're talking about too, who can help you with their thought patterns.
That was a great way to define. I wish we said that sooner. That's such an important comparison is getting fit is a skill just like driving a car. We all remember being 16. I will never forget the first time I got on, for those of you Georgia natives, I-75 South, and thought I would literally rather be in hell than be right here, right now. It was horrible, and now you don't even think about it. Rush hour or not, you just drive. Getting fit is the same way. It is a learned skill, and just like now, as a mid 20s guys or wherever you are, mid 30s, mid 40s people, you don't think about driving. You just get behind the wheel and you do it. I promise you, if you lean into conscious competence, if you lean into being uncomfortable with the skills you're learning in conscious competence of protein goal, aware of caloric intake, whole foods, strength training, steps, eventually you just don't think about them. I mean this not braggadociously at all. I mean it simply in the way that it's so ingrained in me. I can't not do it. I think in the last year there have been
Mm-hmm.
less than 5 days that I've missed a training session if it was scheduled and I haven't gotten at least 10,000 steps. And it's simply because it's so ingrained in my day and it's so a part of my day that I build my day around it. And I don't have to think about it. I just locomotion is locomotion. I have the momentum, I move. And I, by accident, sometimes wind up at 10K, or I may be 2,000 short and my brain won't let me shut down until I go get a quick 15-minute walk. And it's a nice place to be. I don't think about it, I just do it. So you can learn these skills. Be aware of where you are in this cycle. Are you unconsciously incompetent? Maybe. Well, now you can say you don't know what you don't know because you listen to us talk about it. Now it's time to move into conscious incompetence. I now know I don't know shit and I better figure it out. How do you get out of there? Lean into your favorite creators, borrow thought patterns, listen to us, listen to others that have similar ideas, mindsets, and attitudes. And eventually you lean into their mindsets, their behaviors, and their attitudes and can adopt them as your own, and you move into what I called earlier fitness nirvana, which is the unconscious competence phase where you do all of this on autopilot. Being fit is a skill. Being fat is a place that we both were at one point and we actively moved ourselves out of through this learning cycle, and you can too. So I think that is a great place to wrap the concept and to move into something we want to start doing at the end of every episode. And we'd love it if you dropped a comment and told us where you are. So Yusuf and I are on different time zones, but at the end of every episode now, we're going to do what we call a hashtag step check. We're going to make this grow. I guarantee it. I'm calling it. Hashtag step check is going to be on IG and TikTok. So where are you at with your steps today?
It is 128 PST, and I am at 5,700 steps right now.
Not bad for that point in the day. It is 4:28 EST, and I am at 14,483. So
Damn.
I win this
Damn.
round, but I also ran 5 miles first thing this morning, so that's 10K right off the jump there. So that's not really a fair comparison. So we're gonna keep a running tally. I win this round. Drop your comment where you're at with the step check. If you got just one valuable thing from the video, please like, comment, subscribe. It seriously helps us out. Yusuf, any closing notes before we jump out and put a wrap on episode 2?
Absolutely. So, for those of you that don't know, most people know that we coach and that we do this. At least for myself, I do this full time. Michael, you're wrapping up eventually a stint in your career at some future chapter of yours. Eventually, you're going to be converting to, and hopefully, we can all get to a place where I hate to sound like every. This is what every guy's dream is. I even texted this to you. I was like, "We're about to work out. It's Friday and we're going to shoot a podcast episode and talk about something that we love." I was like, do you know how many people would kill for this? Like to be living this life. So, one, this goes for one, just a true token of appreciation and gratitude for those listening and wanting to learn and improve themselves. Some of you know that we about give a lot of our attention, our full effort into coaching and into helping people. It's what we feel that we were called to do. It's why we felt we were a great match. Simply put, what Michael and I want to do is create the coolest, side of fitness, the coolest fitness service on the entire planet. If you were interested in anything that you learned about what we shared or what our mental models are like, or maybe even you want to get some ears on what you're struggling with, hit us up. We'd be happy to help you learn more about our program. But most importantly, we want you to know it's possible and that you can do it. And that it might even be one of the most honest things that you can do is to listen to that calling that I may have better for myself. You absolutely do, and you can do it.
Perfect. Way to put a bow on it. That was beautiful. Tune in next Sunday for episode 3 where we talk about, well, that's to be determined. We'll figure that out. Until then, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we look forward to seeing you in episode 3.